Welcome to the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Grant Competition webinar. If I am coming through clearly and you can understand me, please click the green yes circle. Okay, then I will start. Welcome to the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Grant Competition webinar. The contents of this webinar complement, but do not replace, the request for grant application guidelines. Interested applicants should also carefully read the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines and the Division of Adult Education Policies on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competition's webpage before deciding to submit an application. The guidelines have already been posted. Policies will be posted later this week. As noted, this webinar will be recorded and posted on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competition webpage. We will not be answering questions during this webinar. We will provide information at the end on how to submit questions. This webinar will provide information on the grant application, review, and award processes. We will provide a general overview of the required activities and services and other requirements for grantees. Finally, we will provide suggested resources and grant tips. Section 243 of the Federal Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, Title II of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, provides funds to be awarded through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, PDE, Bureau of Post-Secondary and Higher Education, Division of Adult Education, to provide integrated English literacy and civics education programming. The total federal funding available for awards to provide integrated English literacy and civics education programming through this competition is approximately $1.5 million. This amount is based on the estimated federal grant for fiscal year 2018 as established in the United States Department of Education state tables and is subject to change. Applicants may apply to serve any area of the state, but must demonstrate need for integrated English literacy and civics education program services in that area. As stated in WIOA, funds allocated under Section 243 are to be used for grants for integrated English literacy and civics education in combination with integrated education and training activities. Each program that receives funding under this application shall be designed to prepare adults who are English language learners for and place such adults in unsubsidized employment in in-demand industries and occupations that lead to economic self-sufficiency and integrate with the local workforce development system and its functions. This grant is not meant to provide ESL services for life skills. An eligible applicant must have demonstrated effectiveness in providing adult basic education and literacy activities and helping students achieve the listed outcomes. Applicants must provide quantitative data for the immediate preceding 3 program years. The data must demonstrate the applicant's success in helping students achieve the following outcomes: improve English language proficiency, earn a high school equivalency credential, get a job, retain a job, and enter post-secondary education or training. The data must include the number of individuals in each cohort, the number of those individuals who successfully achieved the outcome, and the resulting outcome. Applicants will also have to provide an explanation of the criteria used to assign individuals to each cohort and to determine the achievement of the outcomes, and explain how the data were collected. Entities that are not able to provide the data needed for demonstrated effectiveness are not eligible providers and will not be able to receive grant funds. Please refer to the request for grant application guidelines for a list of the types of entities that are eligible applicants. Agencies do not have to apply for the Adult Basic Education Direct Service Grant in order to be eligible to apply for the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program grant. That's do not. A consortium or coalition of eligible applicants may apply for a grant. For the purposes of this competition, a consortium or coalition of agencies is defined as a main grantee with one or more sub-grantees. The main grantee will serve as both the fiscal agent for the grant and as a provider of some of the services proposed in the grant application. The main grantee is responsible for ensuring that all activities provided are completed as proposed and is responsible for monitoring and compliance of the sub-grantees. Answers in the grant application should reflect the work of the consortium or coalition as a whole, rather than treat each entity separately. Refer to Section 205.4 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for more information about the responsibilities of the main grantee in a consortium or coalition. Applicants can only be a main grantee or a sub-grantee for an Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program grant. Full details regarding all minimum requirements for Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education programs are available in the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines, which is posted on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. Successful applicants for Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program grant funds must demonstrate the capacity to provide a full range of services throughout the course of a program year. Programs must provide the following to be considered full service for an Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program. Grantees must provide year-round Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education classroom activities and support services, including during the summer. Programs may have a reduced schedule over the summer, but must ensure access to instruction and support services. Funded programs may not shut down over the summer or for an extended winter break. As defined in WIOA, Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education activities include all of the three components in combination: English language acquisition activities, literacy activities, and civics education, which is instruction in the rights and responsibilities of citizenship and civic participation. Grantees must provide at least one integrated education and training activity that no fewer than 50% of the program participants complete over the course of the 2-year grant cycle. No fewer than 50% of the program participants complete the IET over the course of the 2-year grant cycle. The integrated education and training activity does not have to be available year-round. Does not have to be available year-round. Grantees must provide integrated English literacy and civics instruction, excuse me, integrated English literacy and civics education instruction that supports program participants to transition successfully to the integrated education and training activity and to earn a high school equivalency credential if needed as part of the training activity. And applicants must have a plan for ensuring student access to all grant activities, including participation in and completion of the integrated education and training activity. Grantees must also have support services to help students address barriers to participation. Support services to help students identify education and career goals, develop employability skills, and successfully participate in and complete post-secondary education or training and gain employment. Integration of workforce preparation activities into instruction and support services. Workforce preparation activities are designed to help students develop critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, digital literacy skills, and self-management skills, including competencies in using information and resources, working with others, and understanding systems. Grantees must have a program administrator who is a full-time employee of the grantee agency. If the program administrator is not working 100% on division-funded activities, the agency must provide evidence that this individual has sufficient time allocated to these activities to meet all of the requirements of the program administrator position. The program administrator does not have to be paid from grant funds. However, the person must have sufficient time allocated to activities supported by the grant. Grantees must be partners at the local PA CareerLink site and must fulfill all of the roles and responsibilities of a one-stop partner, including entering into a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the local board, contributing to the infrastructure costs of the PA CareerLink site, providing access to grant services through the PA CareerLink site, and providing career services to eligible one-stop partners. Section AA 1.3 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines provides more information. In addition, we will post a draft updated policy G100, Adult Education and the Workforce Development System, to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. Finally, a grantee must have partnership in place with a training provider to deliver the training portion of the integrated education and training activity. The integrated education and training activity proposed by the applicant must meet federal regulations for the activity and additional requirements imposed by the Division of Adult Education. Refer to section 403.1.4 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for detailed information. An integrated education and training activity has three components: adult basic education activities, workforce preparation activities, and occupational training, which have a single set of learning objectives. The IET is part of a career pathway. It is aligned with the with the college and career readiness standards for adult education and prepares students for transition to employment and has a training focus that is aligned with local workforce needs. Successful applicants must submit a one-page graphic organizer to the division as part of the grant approval process. Applicants will not submit this graphic organizer during the application process. No grant will be approved until the applicant has submitted a document that meets division approval. A full plan for the integrated education and training activity must be submitted to and approved by the division no later than January 1st, 2019. Programs must get the integrated education and training activity approved by the division before they can start the IET classes. Failure to have an approved plan for the integrated education and training activity by the deadline will result in suspension of payments until an approved plan is in place. Agencies that do not have an approved plan in place by the end of the first program year will not receive second-year funds until a plan is in place. An eligible participant is defined by WIOA as an individual who has attained 16 years of age, is not enrolled or required to be enrolled in secondary school under state law, and who is basic skills deficient, does not have a secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent, and has not achieved an equivalent level of education, or is an English language learner. Among the eligible participants, PDE believes that participants who have a post-secondary and/or employment goal and who enter the Section 243 Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program at one of the 6 National Reporting System ESL educational functioning levels, as determined by an approved assessment, may benefit most from the services under Section 243. This includes participants who post-test at exit criteria for ESL and are then assessed at adult basic education or adult secondary education levels while participating in the Section 243 program. In awarding funds, PDE will prioritize funding through the review and rating process to grant applications from eligible providers with past effectiveness in high-quality services that improve the skills of eligible participants and help those participants to earn high school equivalency credentials, gain and retain employment, and/or transition to post-secondary education or training. PDE will prioritize funding for those applications that demonstrate a thorough and detailed plan for a Section 243 Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program aligned with local needs that meets all of the minimum requirements discussed earlier and provide a detailed description of preliminary planning, including working with the local workforce partners and social service agencies serving the target population, evidence of the applicant's organizational capacity to meet all of the programmatic, reporting, administrative, and fiscal requirements of the grant, high quality instruction that is based on best practices and the college and career readiness standards for adult education, and is of sufficient intensity to lead to student outcomes. Services that align with the strategies and goals of the local workforce area as defined in the local plan, and with the activities and services of the PA CareerLink site partners. High quality student support services that help students to persist and succeed in adult basic education services and meet their personal, educational, and career goals. An excellent description of need, including evidence of a sufficient number of individuals with the interest in and ability to complete the offered occupational training with the support of the integrated education and training activity at some point during the 2-year grant cycle, and an explanation of how the need was determined and how the applicant determined that the integrated English literacy and civics education program is the best way to address this need. Applicants must demonstrate that they have the required staffing and that the staff members of the integrated English literacy and civics education program are well trained and meet the minimum requirements established by PDE. Refer to the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines, Section 204, and subsections 204.1 to 204.7 for details. Program administrators, coordinators, instructional staff, and student support staff must have at least a bachelor's degree. All programs are required to have a data quality specialist. The data quality specialist is not simply a clerical position doing data entry. This person is responsible for the accuracy and quality of the data reported to the Division of Adult Education. As a result, the division has established minimum requirements for this role. The person serving as the data quality specialist must have a bachelor's degree or a post-secondary credential in data management. Any additional data entry staff who are overseen by the data quality specialist may be clerical staff. The division recommends that programs have additional data entry staff if possible. Beginning in program year 2018-19, programs will be required to enter all data within 14 days of the data being collected once eData is open for the year. Current staff members without the required credentials who are currently in those positions may be grandfathered for the same position for program year 2018-19. The training provider for the training portion of the integrated education and training activity must be properly qualified. The adult education teacher is likely not the qualified trainer. Programs should apply for those funds necessary to meet the grant requirements and provide the proposed services to the number of students they can serve based on need and interest for the proposed services in their service area. This can include the costs associated with the development and implementation of the integrated education and training activity, including compensation to the person providing the occupational training for planning time. Applicants are strongly encouraged to cover the costs of the occupational training with other funding sources available to the program or to the students. However, the costs of providing the occupational training portion of the integrated education and training activity may be paid for from the grant if necessary. The cost of providing an integrated English literacy and civics education program under Section 243 may be higher than that of other types of adult education programs. Applicants may need to cover training costs or a portion of them, which will increase the cost per student. Applicants should factor this into their budgets while ensuring that the costs that they include are reasonable and necessary for the services proposed. Grant applications will be submitted through PDE's eGrants system. Section 3 of the Request for Grant Application Guidelines provides details on getting access to the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program grant application in eGrants. In the meantime, to allow applicants to review the content of the grant application, we have posted a PDF of the grant content to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. Please note that the grant content document is for reference only, as the applications will be submitted through eGrants. The eGrants system homepage has several user guides. In addition, we will post some tips to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. The Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program grant applications will open on Wednesday, February 28th, 2018. The grant application deadline is April 9th, 2018 at 2 p.m. At that point, the eGrant system will close the grant. In order to complete the grant, all sections must be marked complete. Once all sections are marked complete, the applicant will click the Complete Step button. The eGrant system records the exact time that the applicant clicks the button. Once the grant has been successfully completed, the status will show as submitted for peer review. After the grant deadline, grants will be reviewed and scored. All Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program 061 applications will be reviewed, except those disqualified for one or more of the following reasons. Entity submitting the application does not meet the definition of eligible applicant because it does not have 3 complete years of program data necessary to meet the requirement of demonstrated effectiveness. The application is incomplete, or the application is not completed by the application deadline. Review teams of 3 people will review the grant applications using a scoring rubric. A summary of the scoring is in Appendix A of the Request for Grant Application Guidelines. All 3 sections of the grant application, the narrative, the applicant information section, and the budget, will be reviewed and scored. In addition, local workforce boards will review the applications to provide services in the local area for consistency with the local plan. The Division of Adult Education will provide the appropriate applications and review tools to each local board after grants are submitted to the division via eGrants. Applicants should not give their applications to the local boards directly for review. PDE will take the results of the review by local boards and any related recommendations to improve alignment into consideration when making grant awards. Once the applications have been reviewed and scored, they will be ranked from highest to lowest scoring. Applications will be funded from highest scoring to lowest scoring based on the following criteria: a minimum score of 112 and availability of funds. Successful applications meeting the above criteria and under consideration for acceptance may require revisions or submission of additional information prior to approval. Successful applicants will be required to submit a 1-page graphic organizer outlining the proposed schedule of services. Applications with a score of less than 112 will not be funded regardless of availability of funds. Successful grant applications will be approved for a 2-year grant cycle. Grant funds for the 2nd year will be awarded through a notification of funding contingent on the availability of funds. The renewal option and grant amount for the 2nd year will be based on the following criteria: contract compliance, including success in meeting contracted enrollment and providing the contracted services, evidence of sufficient progress in meeting the state-imposed performance standards, evidence of continuous program improvement, compliance with fiscal and programmatic policies and guidelines, and the amount of the federal appropriation. Programs that fail to sufficiently address the above criteria may be terminated prior to the end of the grant cycle. PDE reserves the right to extend the 2-year grant cycle as the situation warrants. The Division of Adult Education has provided many resources to applicants. Links to the resources are on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage, which can be accessed by going to PDE's website at www.education.pa.gov. Select Instruction, then Adult Basic Education to get to the division's homepage. From the homepage, click on Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions link. Applicants should review the resources both before and during the grant writing process. The resources include the Request for Grant Application Guidelines, the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines, and relevant division policies. We also provide links to the Pennsylvania WIOA Combined State Plan and the regional and local workforce plans. We do not have links to the Memorandum of Understanding for the local PA career links in the local areas. We recommend that applicants check the local board's website or contact the local board for copies of the MOUs. We strongly recommend that all agencies that are considering applying for an integrated English literacy and civics education program grant carefully read the request for grant application guidelines and the adult education and family literacy guidelines for program year 2018-19 before starting the grant application. For all applicants, these documents will give you a good idea of what is expected of grantees. For currently funded programs, there are significant changes and new requirements to consider. Once you begin working on the grants in eGrants, be sure to read all of the help buttons. They are blue circles with a question mark in them next to the question. If you click on the circle, it will bring up a box with the help button text. The help buttons provide the maximum characters allowable for the answer and list information that must be addressed in the answer. Note that the maximum characters include spaces. Make sure all charts and tables are complete. When composing the responses for each item in the grant application, make sure the answers address the information that is being requested. Avoid including information that is not relevant to the item. Make sure the responses are clear and concise, and do not assume that the reviewers know your program. Reviewers should not have to search the answer for the necessary information or try to interpret agency-specific terminology. Unfortunately, eGrants does not allow for any formatting, bulleted or numbered lists, or paragraphs. The system also has problems recognizing special characters. Some applicants write the content of their grant applications in a Word or Pages document and then copy and paste the information into eGrants. If you choose to do this, make sure the text is plain text without any formatting before copying and pasting. This will prevent issues such as apostrophes showing up as question marks and other format conversion issues. Save often. At the bottom of each section is a Save and Continue button, which allows you to save the information that has been entered and keeps you on the same page. The Save button will save the information and take you back to the grant application detail page. eGrants is designed to log out after 20 minutes of inactivity, but it is known to sometimes take you out of the system before that and while you're working on it. So we do please make sure that you save on a regular basis. Applicants have to provide evidence of effectiveness in 2 sections of the narrative. All applicants must provide the data themselves. The division will not do calculations on behalf of any applicants. In addition to providing quantitative data, applicants will provide a narrative explanation of the data. There is a section in the narrative called Alignment with Workforce with 6 questions relating proposed activities to the local workforce plan. The 6 questions are listed 3 times. This is to allow applicants providing services in multiple local workforce areas to address each area, up to 3, individually. So all applicants must complete the 6 questions for Workforce Area 1. Only applicants applying to serve 2 or 3 local areas have to complete the questions under Workforce Area Sections 2 and 3. The maximum total score in the Alignment with Workforce section is 12 points, regardless of how many workforce areas are addressed. Scores for multiple areas will be averaged to get the total score. The information in the agency activity summary should reflect the activities that the agency actually proposes to provide. The number of IET participants is a subset of the total planned enrollment. Institutional refers to services in correctional or other residential facilities that are not open to the public. Before completing the budgets, review sections 600 to 609 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines. This covers allowable uses of funds, how to allocate allowable costs to the budget, and other fiscal requirements. Please note that in some cases, the Division of Adult Education uses function and object codes differently than PDE's Division of Federal Programs. Applicants must refer to the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines when completing the budgets. This grant requires a 25% local match. The guidelines provide information on how to correctly calculate your required local match and related requirements. WIOA has specific requirements regarding administrative costs of federally funded adult basic education funding. The Division of Adult Education uses function code 2300 for these administrative costs. Under WIOA, administrative costs are capped at 5% of the grant amount. The following costs are considered administrative costs, which means they must be charged to function code 2300. Planning costs, including the costs associated with planning and coordination with workforce system partners. The Pennsylvania CareerLink infrastructure costs paid from the grant, and costs of contracted professional development. The cost of contracted professional development refers to funds paid to the larger agency to cover the cost of mandated agency professional development or training, and the fees paid to outside professional development providers. It does not refer to adult education staff time participating in professional development activities. It also does not refer to the work of the in-house professional development specialist and the program administrators and coordinators supporting and leading staff professional development activities. Any restricted indirect costs charged to the grant are also considered administrative and are included in the 5% cap. WIOA allows the division to agree to, through negotiations with the local program, a higher amount when the 5% cap is too restrictive to allow for adequate planning and administration. Applicants that believe that they have a strong case for a waiver to the 5% cap should budget the expected administrative costs. The division will consider the request when successful applications are being processed. Please note that priority for waivers will be given to allow successful applicants to meet the requirements to contribute to PA CareerLink infrastructure costs. This concludes the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program Grant Application webinar. If you have questions at any time during the application process, submit them to ra-able@pa.gov. Emails should include Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Program 061 in the subject line. Division of Adult Education staff will periodically post responses to submitted questions on the Division of Adult Education Grant Applications webpage for all applicants to review. Do not send questions directly to division staff. Thank you.